let's learn something about being human. In this video, I want to go back and take a look at some of the mechanics of the Mastery Circle Life Assessment that we covered in the previous video. So those of you who are in the middle of working with the program, or you've already done your first diagram, we want to just review a little bit about that red line diagram that you get and your out of balance point score. And we want to make the connection that this is how well-rounded people, high achievers, live their lives, and how they sustain some of that great accomplishment they've created by living a life worth living. So let's go back and take a look at a couple of these items we covered the last time around. We started with those two lines, those upper and lower control limits, and turned them into those concentric circles. Our next step was to go and take our top 5 priorities and do some work with them on the Mastery Circle worksheet, but come up with our top 5 priorities and place them in the rectangles. After that, we gave them some scores based on some information that we gave in that first video. And we gave them some scores. We kind of highlighted the scores and then connected the scores with a solid red line, which gives us that diagram of where our life is, where the life balance or the well-roundedness in our life is at this point in time. So we end up with the diagram and also with our out of balance point score, where we did the little bit of the math. We'll see if we come back to that, but for some of you it might have been a bad experience. For others, it's pretty straightforward to get your out of balance points. But I want to tell you a story about a trip to Lake Tahoe, California, up in the high Sierras. This was around the month of May, and I was up in the Truckee area near Donner Lake. Now, as soon as I say that, some of you know exactly the area I'm talking about. Yes, in the 1840s and 50s, when all the immigrants were coming to the West to find their gold and all their free land, whatever, the Donner Party got stuck. I wanted to take a canoe out on the lake. So I go to the rental shack, and I tell the young girl who's working there for the summer, or early spring actually, I want to take a canoe out on the lake. She says, well, you have to take a life vest. So she gives me a life vest. And then she says, well, you might want to leave your keys here at the shack, just in case, okay? So I put the life vest on the counter, and I'm checking around for my keys. And I finally find my keys. I give them to her, she puts them up on a hook, and I turn around and head out with my canoe, with my paddle. I get in the lake, and it's a long lake going east and west, but north and south it's a little narrower, but it's still pretty far across. So I decide I'm going to paddle my canoe and go across the middle of the lake and get to the other side. It's a really windy day, so as I paddled, trying to kind of go against the wind, it kept blowing me around, and it would make me make a circle. So I'm trying again really hard to get across that lake, and the wind blows me, turns me into a circle. The third time, I'm in the middle of the lake, and I push, and sploosh, I turned over in that canoe. And right about then, I remembered that the life vest was still on the counter at the rental shack. So I really honestly have no idea what I did with the paddle, but the canoe kind of scooped up water. I'm in the middle of this lake in May, so there's snow melt, and I'm wondering, will a canoe sink if it fills with water? So I pushed it so that it turned upside down, but then I've got the bottom of the canoe, and I'm feeling the hypothermia set in. I'm kind of thinking, so this is how it happens. They'll write an article about that was the last we saw of Rick. Well, I'm struggling. I'm looking at both edges or beaches, thinking it's too far to swim, and I'm losing my control. And then from way up on the north side of the lake, I see this little A-frame of an aluminum boat up in the air, and somebody is steaming towards me. It's a guy named Gil, older guy named Gil. And he says, I just looked out and I thought something's not right about that canoe. And I thought, so you're not kidding. It was upside down. And he got me into his boat. I grabbed my canoe and he pulled me off over to the edge. And I was thrilled to make it out of there. And I thought, you know, the extra priorities that I'm suggesting you have in your life, instead of having one single focus, it's like those are your life vest. Having having five to start out with, a full set of five, it's like having a life vest that you carry with you through life. So here are the ABCs of slaying this dragon. How do you make some progress on this mastery circle? The first thing you do is you move 15-minute blocks, just little kind of a sample of time, energy, or effort. You maybe take from something that's overdone, just take a little bit and put it on something that's underdone. And maybe you can make that circle, that diagram on the circle start to smooth out a little bit. It's kind of like going and getting some tester paint, a sample. And it's only about 3 ounces or so, and you take it home and you try it. It's not going to ruin the wall if you mess up, of course, if you do it in the right place. But it's just a tester. It's like, in those warehouse stores where, the nice people are giving you samples of cheese, of nachos, things like that. You're just going to take a sample this first time around, this first suggestion on slaying the dragon, and try to just move a few things without really disrupting your life. The second thing I want you to do is to start practicing changing your patterns in little tiny ways. Move the furniture around. Go to a different restaurant, order different food, and actually eat it, okay? Read different books. Maybe try reading different magazines. I was speaking on this under my Balance Mastery program at a conference in Puerto Rico, and it was an interior design conference many years ago. So I told them that we got to this part, I said you need to diversify your patterns and just do it to get slowly used to moving that red line around. So I'm flying back on the plane, and I'm coming off a business trip, so I go up to the front of the plane where they used to keep the magazines, and I grab a Forbes or Business Week. I go back, like I'm some big bold businessman. And I thought, wait, you just taught, Rick, you just spoke about diversifying, changing your pattern. So I went up to the front, put the business magazines back, and I took a magazine called Claire Marie, a women's magazine, and I took it back to my seat, and I took the cover and folded it all the way back so nobody could see I was reading a women's magazine. And I found out there are a lot of good women writers, and they're very upset about men. And they gave all kinds of reasons for it in the magazine. So I learned a lot. I expanded kind of my usual way of doing life. So that second item is just to move things around. Get used to changing parts of your lifestyle so that when it comes to those important things in your mastery circle, you're able to move things around like a high achiever. So the third way to slay the dragon is to really get serious and move 1 hour chunks or big chunks of time, energy, or effort from one item that's too overdone to another that's underdone. We call it robbing from Peter, but you have to pay Paul. So we want you to keep it within the circle, within this mastery circle. And if you're ever wondering, if you saw the last video and we talked about that maximum score, the 45-point score, and we said that wasn't a bad score. There was no bad score. Here's one of the reasons. If you shave off a score of 3 and you get it down to a +2, and let's say you had a -3 and you moved the time, energy, or effort to this one and got it down to a 2 like we have here, -2, you've just saved 5 points with this move, another 5 points with this move, and you've saved a total of 10 points with one strategic move. That's really good stuff. That's what we say when we say keep it within the golden circle. And when you rob Peter, you gotta pay Paul, so to speak. So it's kind of like a flywheel. And you've seen those flywheels on engines or on an exercise bicycle. It's like it's that metal wheel that it takes a while for that thing to get going, but then it doesn't want to stop. That's the definition of a habit. And that's how high achievers look at the habits in their life that make that lifestyle worth living. So whatever you're thinking about doing, with those priorities, with an individual priority, just think of it like the more work you put into it, the more it's going to give you back later. And that's how some of the other items on your mastery circle that you gently, as time goes by, you remove because something else goes into the circle, into the golden circle. Well, those others are being pushed ahead by kind of the idea of the flywheel. And I tell a story of my gymnastics coach in college. We called him Mr. T. Great guy. We love the man. Had some health issues as a kid. In his 80s now. Got COVID, and he's winning as of this filming. He's fighting hard and winning. But Coach Taylor would always have his current group of team members. And that was kind of like his current mastery circle. But each year people would graduate and move away. And then some of those would kind of come back around and visit, come and watch the team work out, whatever. It's like they were on the flywheel of still being connected with our coach. You might think of it that way as far as extra items that have kind of gone off of your main mastery circle, but they're still out there in your life. Because you're building on them, you're working them like a good habit. So, we've talked about our 15-minute blocks. We've talked about our changing the life patterns, doing a little bit, and then about our 1-hour blocks. Want to just go back a little bit and talk about a little bit of the gravity or the importance of being that well-rounded human being. I think it's unfortunate, but in a small and dangerous way, the single, solitary, sole, focus in life type of activity increases the risk of self-harm and even suicide. And there I said that word. We're struggling with this all over the world, but we don't want to say it. I've had some industries where I work, and they're suffering with some of the members, some of the people in their industry, and they lose them from time to time. I think we need to hit that head on, and I do believe sometimes in a small way that single solitary focus in life can be a part of making that a bigger problem than it should be. I want to talk to you about something that we call the Reticular Activating System. It's the part of your brain or your consciousness that brings something to you in your world. It's like if you decide you're going to buy a new car, you suddenly start seeing that car everywhere you go. You decide you're going to buy a new phone, you see that phone on everybody's desk. There's something, it's like your conscious mind gives the assignment, but your unconscious mind takes the assignment and kind of does the work. So it's called your Reticular Activating System, or RAS. And we say it's little habits that grow deep roots. Little habits that grow deep roots. So I also have a term for this. I call it a coinci-merge. It's like a coincidence that merges together. And I'll give you a quick example. The other day I was in my exercise room, and I'm writing. I have a little gratitude board. I don't go overboard with it, but I really believe in it. And I'm writing down the word health. And as I'm writing the word health, on NPR News, the reporter says the word health at exactly the same time. Now, some people could say the universe is kind of talking to you or whatever. I'd say it's your consciousness being able to be aware of things around you without you putting a whole lot of effort in it. I've got a bunch of other examples of that, but it's like you're reading the paper and the television anchor on the news says the same thing. You're reading about Venezuela and they say Venezuela on the news, something like that. I think part of that is your reticular activating system kind of telling your subconscious mind to be aware, be aware, be aware of whenever you come across something like this. I started piano later in my life. When I started piano, I could be driving down the road at 60, 70, 80 mile an hour, and off on a side street, I'd spot a piano store. That's the power of your conscious and unconscious mind looking out for the things you've said are important to you. That's what starts to happen with your mastery circle. That's what starts to happen when you have a lifestyle worth living. More of that comes to you. So it's kind of like you have a raised garden bed, and what you put in it, even if it's the seed of an idea, if that's where you're focusing a lot of your energy, that's where things are going to grow. Now, in my balanced mastery programs, I have what's called the 10 achievement factors. I've got 10 things that high achievers do that keep them well-rounded and balanced, but also at the upper levels of achievement. And that's one of my core beliefs, that you have to, if you're going to have the benefit of being a balanced, well-rounded person, then you also need to be an above average achiever. How do you do that? I went and studied those kind of achievers for years. I put them in a book, the Professional Balance book, many years ago. And I've pulled 4 out that might give you a leg up on getting that mastery circle smoothed out in your life. 4 of these that just might be useful for you as you go through this effort. And I want to commend you for doing something that will improve your life, personally, professionally, your family, do a lot of good things for you. The first achievement factor is called activity tailoring. And it says, consider tailoring your activities according to your strengths. If you're a morning person, do the critical kind of things during that time. If you in the afternoon, you kind of get what I call the afternoon burrito blues. You ate a big burrito and there's no extra energy. Just do routine things during that time. So tailor your activities according to your strengths, and you'll come across better. Your achievement will rise across the board. The second one is called the behavioral training effect. And this one comes from the exercise physiology literature. So bear with me on this. We're going to take a step back first. Physiological fitness comes from 3 things. You've got to work out so many times a week, and most people would say about 3 times a week, maybe 4. Okay. And you've got to work out for how long? Maybe 20, 30 minutes. There's controversy, but you got to get out there 3, 4 times a week, and you got to spend 20, 30, maybe 40 minutes. So you got the number of days a week, you got the number of minutes. And one more thing is that you've got to get your heart rate up to a certain level. And don't say it just has to beat. It's got to go past beating. It's got to go into its training zone. Then you have the physiological training effect. Okay? Now, for this behavioral training effect, it's based on this. It takes about 28 exposures of me doing something, of you doing something, before it becomes a habit, before it gets dialed in as a habit. Unfortunately, when we don't have the time to do the whole routine, we don't have time to do the whole series of exercises, we tend to skip it completely. When we skip, we have broken the habit chain, and it really has to start over. So the behavioral training effect used by high achievers across the world is this. You don't have enough time to do the whole thing that's important for you, maybe some of those items. Do a little tiny bit, and your brain will recall it as a full session. Your brain will remember it as a habit building link, the behavioral training effect. The third was a big disappointment when I was researching for the Professional Balance book. But it kind of evolved. As I studied high achievers, people who had their mastery circles under control, people who had really good things going in their careers, there was something that was consistent across most of them, and that was nutrition. So I came up with the nutritional 3-4-5 rule. 3 meals a day, 4 food groups, and 5 glasses of water. I hope I got the hands and numbers right. 3 meals a day, the 4 food groups, of course they've changed those. They change them all the time. But you can go back to variety on your plate for each meal. And then 5 glasses of water. We used to say 8, but you also can count water and the juices you drink, or milk or coffee, any other source, but you got to get 5, 3, 4, 5. Highest achievers in the world talked about it in their biographies, in their autobiographies, on interviews. Nutrition was key for them. And the fourth, you might not like this one. I hope you like the first 3, but the fourth is called the more mistakes last place achievement factor. I call it M2LP. And it says this: the highest achievers in the world make more mistakes and come in last place more often. More mistakes, come in last place more often. So there must be something there with running into barriers, running into rough spots, running into what some call failure, I call a milestone. But there's something there that seems to be correlated with high achievement. Something with failure, so to speak, or having trouble along the way. And I remember years ago, the Los Angeles Times came up with an article. They came out with an article that said, winners lose 72% of the time. And I thought, oh man, I don't want to be losing 72% of the time to be a winner, until I thought, well, how much do the losers lose? So apparently a big part of achievement, a big part of keeping that mastery circle in line, doing well, getting better all the time, is making mistakes, coming in last place from time to time. So activity leverage, the behavioral training effect, nutritional 3-4-5 rule, and the fourth is M2LP, more mistakes, last place. So really, we're talking about being human, of being of value to yourself, to myself, and others around you. And, whether it's a teammate, whether it's a partner, romantically, a spouse, whether it's a business partner or an employee, a person with a well-functioning mastery circle is worth their weight in gold. That's the kind of person we want to be around more often, because it will rub off on us. And there's something that I call the power of context. The power of context. The single focus, one-shot wonder just doesn't work. You become a target. A person that all they care about is one thing in their lives. You've seen it before they become a target. It's like a piñata, and people are blindly smacking at you from every side. Being that well-rounded person with a mastery circle that has its 5 elements helps you to see context. You see context. You see the bigger picture in your family and your personal affairs. You see the bigger picture. You see the context with clients and customers. Those people, when you have this going on for yourself, They and you are worth your weight in gold. So as we come to the end of the video, I want to give you our corporate rationale. For larger organizations that we tend to work with most of the time, we want to suggest that we believe and we think there's great value in live in-person training, in live in-person professional development, supported by screen time. We've experimented in the last few years with screen time alone, and believe me, the results are not really good. I've seen it over and over, whether it's a dental practice or a veterinary practice. We want to pull you together and work on what it takes to be a full human being. Whether you're dealing with a retreat or a strategic planning session, getting people together in person does great things for the organization, does great things for that kind of that emotional, sensory feedback when you're with other people. Whether you're dealing with basic supervision or higher level management, or you're dealing with good solid leadership skills, or maybe just one-on-one personal coaching. That's one area I believe where the screen time, the phone time can work well with that one-on-one life coaching, executive coaching, or we have something we call the Samsara of Life 40-line coaching. But in any case, you're pulling people together so the best learning can happen. So some of you feel, and I get this all the time, some of you feel, where do you get the time to do all this, Rick? How do you have the time? Well, that is a really tough one. I'm not saying there's magic. I'm not saying that it's easy, but I'd like to give you something that I believe her name's Doris Kearns Goodwin, the presidential author. She writes about all the presidents, and she says, if Lincoln had time to go to the theater over 100 times, kind of should have been 99, but if he had time to go to the theater during the Civil War, that says something. If FDR had a daily cocktail party in the White House where you can only talk about the books you've read, and that was during World War II, or Teddy Roosevelt had the time or made the time to exercise for 2 hours most afternoons. She says, none of us has an excuse. So let me tell you my final story. I want to take you to the Netherlands, and I want to talk about the Dutch Bicyclist. I was on a business trip with some other consultants to teach a group of people that were employed by what used to be called Anderson Consulting. So I flew from San Francisco to Heathrow to Schiphol in Amsterdam, and we took a car down to a place called Zeist, Netherlands. Well, my luggage stayed in London. So I've got to teach the first day with my slacks that I'd flown in, with my shirt. And the second day, one of the Anderson people said, Rick, here's a shirt. Can you just wear this? And so we wrapped up the 2 days. And then the team went on to France. We had our next gig in Paris. And I stayed the day in the town called Zeist. And I decided I'm going to ask the hotel for one of those upright bicycles. And I'm going to ride the 6 miles or 9 kilometers to a place called Utrecht and have a big old Dutch beer, then right back, and hopefully my luggage would be there. So they gave me a bike, and I take it out, and I noticed they don't really pump up the tires, so it's kind of bouncing like this. And I'm pedaling, heading off to Utrecht. And up ahead of me, I see this woman on a bicycle, and she's got 2 bags of groceries on each side in the panniers or baskets, and she's wearing a big old leather coat. So I thought, I used to be a good cyclist. I wonder if I can catch her. And I was thinking of the legend of the Dutch Bicyclist. They're all so good. They average 6'1" or something like that. And she's moving at a good clip. So I'm just pedaling. I'm not closing the gap. So I hit a little bit harder and the pants are kind of sticking to my legs and the shirt's pretty much ruined. And she hits a red light, slows down. I kind of catch up with her and I think, okay, now I've kind of caught up with her. She hits the green light, she gets a green light, and boom, she's gone again. It was like she was Superwoman. So I just really turn it on. My chest is burning, my legs, the pants are stuck to my legs, my shirt's ruined, and I'm not catching up with her. She hits another red light. I finally get closer, closer, closer. She takes off again, and from around one of those bags of groceries, I hear vroom, vroom, vroom. She's got a motor on the bicycle. I'm on a bicycle and I'm racing against a motorcycle. Well, I made it to Utrecht, had my beer, and sheepishly rode back. My luggage was there. But I learned something that day. I learned that we're all pedaling as fast as we can. We're all pedaling, but pedaling fast will get us nowhere. We need to change gears if we want to compete and thrive. And it's always useful to take a life vest on this journey of being human. Thank you very much.